Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into the 5onCast or whatever I decide the name is. I am your eternally living host, Patrick Downs, no longer the co-host, as I've had to be subservient to others in the past. This is now my own thing. Thanks for listening. Today I am joined by Belal Batrawy. I always mess up his name, but he can tell you it correctly right now. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on? No, you got it pretty much right.
Nice,
Wait,
pretty
no,
much.
yeah,
Bilal?
you were slightly off. Bilal.
Bilal. Okay, it's the whale
There
that
it
fucks me up, dude. Like the caucasity of my tongue just gets in there and just can't do it.
You got to work on the caucasity of your
I
tongue.
gotta work on my
I'm
caucasity.
just letting you know, so we can run it.
So just instantly the vibe's different. But today we're going to be talking about mostly mental health, a little bit about consulting. I'm thinking the community I started in Bravado might be a good jumping off point. Have you had a chance to go look at that at all yet?
Yeah, I dove into a little bit, but these videos that you're telling me about, now I got to go back and watch those.
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
in your community. I'm in Paul Salamanca's community and Beck Collins. I love all three.
Yeah, those are my favorites as well as yours. I mean, Death to Fluff is probably the best name. I almost went with When You Fluff with a little skull and crossbones, but I don't want to
Uh,
rip you off too bad.
Trademark, yeah, man. I would allow you. I heard from my lawyers, man.
Yeah. But something I thought was interesting was like, I think we were in Mental Health Awareness Month, right? And when I
Yes.
talk about mental health and sales, pretty much everybody goes straight to depression and anxiety.
Hmm.
I feel like those are like the gateway drugs to talking about mental health and mental illness,
Hmm.
right? Where it's
Yeah.
it's like depression's the marijuana and anxiety's the cocaine, right? When we're getting in there, and
Yeah.
I'm glad I appropriately put the depressant and stimulant drugs at the right
You did a
place
very
because
good
that was
job,
on
by
the
the way.
fly. It's those
You did a
improv
very good job
classes.
there. Yeah, I was pretty impressed you got through that too. I was like, wow, Patrick's in the mood here.
Yeah, dude, my brain was like trying to match everything together. But yeah, I mean, those are the things that everybody talks about. And my issue with that is we still have this huge gate above like schizophrenia and people even with like more intense signs of bipolar and borderline personality disorder. And the funny thing is, I know a lot of people that suffer from those that
Mhm.
hold jobs in sales, but
Yeah.
they've never told
Anyone.
anyone.
Nor should they, by the way.
No, you shouldn't.
Definitely
Like
not your
right now,
management.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Why do you say that specifically?
Oh man, come on. We know. Like we're not. Okay. Anybody. Look, I'm getting up my seat. Like I'm getting riled up here. Okay. Okay. Let's slow down a little bit here. Like let's kind of review the state of sales today, right? It's in decline. Sales numbers aren't being hit across the board. Um, Management for sales is seeing the highest turnover in recent memory. And then we just got hit by COVID-19, where cultures that were built on winning, which is false because winning is an outcome, not a cultural value, crumbled overnight because all of a sudden companies aren't winning anymore. And it's not easy to win deals like it was before. And you just went to from an environment where if you sent a bad email 3 months ago, it just got deleted. Now, if you send a bad email, you might get blasted on LinkedIn. You might go viral. I mean, that's like people's appetite and tolerance and patience is gone. So put all this together, right? And then tack on the worst part of it, mass firings, particularly in sales. I mean, the numbers when you hear about XYZ company fired 300 people, a lot of those are sellers, right? It's statistically skewed towards revenue facing teams because revenue numbers are down. So you don't need as many. So like recruiting and the support mechanisms for that as well also are the ones that are going to be harder hit than some of the core things like engineers or product or design and so on. So that's all. So put all that together and then mix in the fact that we know that sales is a male dominated sport, a male dominated industry that has a issue with bro culture, has an issue with being a boys club, and then try to walk into that firestorm and talk about your mental health, the issues you're facing personally, being vulnerable and opening up. That, I mean, we're don't. Right? So the answer is don't, because it's not going to be well received.
I know. By 99% of people, there's a very small portion of people that will receive it, but you
Right.
never know. I mean, that's so rare that yeah, the chances are bad.
Yeah.
Um, and I
Yeah.
mean, I've struggled a lot with mental health, and I've gotten a couple diagnoses, but they change every time. So I'm like, there's something going on. Like if you're vague about it, you can kind of get by. But if you go to your boss and go, "Yo, my schizophrenia is acting up," they're just gonna be like, "All right, I'm gonna go talk to the board."
Yeah.
They'll cut your
Wait,
ass.
I'll make it even like I once mentioned that I wanted to get an MBA, and I got shit for that from my boss, who was like,
What?
"Oh, you're not dedicated to selling then because you want to go off and continue." I'm like, "Don't you want people that want to better themselves? Like that sounds like the craziest thing in the world." So I'm just saying, like, if you can't even mention that you want to promote or grow yourself or maybe do something outside of sales, which is also pretty taboo, right? To go tell your sales manager, you know what? I'd love to grow into a PM role. They'd be like, hmm, right? So so if you can't even talk about those things, then forget talking about mental health and your personal state and your well-being, right? Because that's like several levels beyond that.
Yeah, and I mean, you even just zooming out on this, people in executive leadership are looking at the business like it's a big chessboard, right? And like you're one of the pieces. And if suddenly something changes with your rook and your rook wants to, be a king, I need another rook. I don't know if I can find a rook that's as good as that rook. Or if the rook's like, man, I sometimes see pawns in the corner when I should not be seeing those. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, well, that rook's not going to function the right way. And so if at any point your piece becomes incorrect, they have to remove you from the board. And that's just
Yes,
the way it is.
that's just the way it
Uh,
is.
do you see a world where that doesn't happen? I mean, is that just a function of business?
Um, you know, it's a fantastic question, and the right answer is I don't know. I mean, that's the safe answer. The reality is, I think in a lot of these things, when we talk about um, an industry changing or a mindset of profession changing, it would take like generational change. So I always, I mean, I hold a more pessimistic view that sales is going to really see a renaissance when the SDRs and AEs of today become the VPs and CROs. I kind of maybe have given up a bit, or I'm more skeptical and bearish on the leadership that we have today coming around, and everything's going to work out, because most of the time it's the exception, not the norm, to find a world-class, great running sales organization. It's much easier to pick up the phone and you could call any random seller right now and we'd add them to this conversation, and they totally relate to having to fake dials, having their commission check played with, having their attitude checked for this, that, and the other, feeling like they can't post what they want online, and then of course then imagine them trying to talk about their mental health or well-being in that environment when they can't even do some of these basic things, right? So yeah, I'm kind of skeptical that it will change anytime soon.
That's bleak, and that's what people come to online media for, is to be bummed out. So I'm glad we can provide that for people.
Give me a
Ultimately.
good shot right now. Give me a good hit of it.
Well, the good news is, if you go to my community, you'll still see people sharing regardless,
Mm,
which I mean says a lot about people. And I
that
think
says a lot.
the only way this changes if that becomes normal, right? Like
Yeah.
if everybody on your team did that, you couldn't fire all of them. Like
Yes.
if that was just the norm, you just couldn't, and they would have to shift the board.
Yes.
But it has to become normal.
Yeah.
I really see that being the only way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it has to, like you said, it has to be everyone, right? It has
Everybody.
to be something where it's like, it's all or nothing, because it just going to take, it's interesting because I'm sure everybody has seen, or if they haven't, they're going to now go search that video of that one dude who dances and then gets everybody to start dancing at that event. That video went viral.
Hmm.
And there's a great breakdown of it, of how the real leader in that occurrence wasn't the guy who just started dancing all willy-nilly, because one person dancing is just a crazy person. It was the second and third people who joined that were the true leaders of the movement to get everybody dancing at that concert, because when they jumped in, they validated that the first person wasn't crazy and made it a group thing. And then it became really easy to be the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eventually when you're the 25th, the 28th person to do it, it's no big deal, right? Because you're just joining a group now, and it's already been socially validated to dance your butt off and be cool. So in the same way, the pioneers like yourself that are out there creating communities that can openly talk about this, we all need to support that, because if we don't, then it's going to be cast as like the exception, as the offshoot, and it's not going to be brought into the mainstream, which is really dangerous, because then it's going to be a deafening silence. It's going to increase the silence even more. It's going to make it worse and more severe. And that's the wrong way we want to go. So we have to do it all together. That's why we have to talk about it.
Yeah, like a spectacular failure can can definitely cause problems. I mean, we look at like Bernie's campaign. it's unfortunate because you know what's going to happen after his second loss is people are just going to stop trying for a while. It's like, oh, he couldn't do it.
He couldn't do it.
All right, well, we might as well just give up then.
That's right. That's
the attitude of most people.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate, but it's true, man. But I don't know. I believe in our community. I mean, I see you and Jeff, that Jeff actually co-founded this community with me, are doing something as well, right?
Yeah. We're doing a webinar on June 4th regarding mental health and sales, just to talk about it again. I think when people just see the topic being brought up a lot, it just makes it feel safer to speak about. And the reality is, we can't, like we said in the beginning, like we can't talk about it internally with our management, but we can talk about it pretty openly peer to peer. Like I can talk to another sales colleague about mental health issues and feel pretty comfortable doing that. I would not feel comfortable doing it with like a manager or an executive from my company, because I don't know how they're going to use that information. So I think that's the model we got to get to. It's like peer to peer. And the technology we have today allows us to do that, allows us to connect to each other, especially now that we're all working from home and dealing with the same stuff. It's a lot easier for all of us to connect.
Do you feel like most people feel that way, that they can share with their peers? Or do you think there's still kind of a wall there?
I mean, maybe I'm biased or skewed because of posting on LinkedIn so much, but I take every Thursday to just connect with random people that follow my content and want to talk. And, I spend a good 5-6 hours every Thursday doing that with random strangers. And there hasn't been a single conversation for doing that for nearly 4 months straight, where in the first 2 minutes I didn't connect with that person, even though oftentimes I have nothing in common with them other than we both work in sales. But that alone is enough. Yeah, it's enough, right? Because we know
weird?
each other.
Is that common in professions? Do you think that's something that's fairly unique to sales?
I'd like to think that it's unique to us. Maybe it's not, but I'd like to hold on to that special thought and feel like it is unique, because God, man, we just we get hammered in so many ways. You do this job long enough, you're going to get hammered in some way. And so you could just relate to somebody else that's taking the same hammering. It's like, you know what it's like when XYZ 1, 2, 3. It's like, yeah, man, tell me about it. It's the story of my life. And what's beautiful about it is when you hear your own story and somebody else's, you're like, dude, I know exactly what you're saying. I can connect with that on such a deep level. And I don't even know anything about you, right? I don't know your political views, your religious views, I don't need to, because I can connect with you just on that one piece.
I know I'm going to get my first piece of like mail, and it's going to be from an architect, and it's going to be like, you motherfucker, like I connect to other architects on a deep primal level, and you did not acknowledge that, and I'm very upset. It's going to happen. It's just kind of my luck. But no, I think there's something in there, man, because I think there's something like somewhat traumatic about being in sales that that also kind of bonds you, and it's obviously not healthy. I mean, trauma bonding is a thing. And sometimes I'm talking to people, I'm like, yo, if like a psychiatrist or a psych was here, they would look at this and be like, yo, this is not healthy. But
I mean, I agree, right? I mean, you're right. It's not healthy sometimes. I mean, and there's I have a lot of frustrations over the 7 startups I've been a part of. I have several stints on my, I think every seller can relate to, that's been in the game long enough, can relate to making that decision of whether they show a short stint on the resume or cover it up. And there's always a story behind why. And it's usually not a pretty one. I've got 3 of those on mine. I have 3 startups that I was a part of less than 9 months. I just put them on there because I'm like, yo, I mean, I'm just being real. It happened. It sucked. There's horrible stories from all 3, and that's how it goes.
The hard part is like, obviously in an interview, you don't want to badmouth anybody, right? And so how do you handle that when somebody asks?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? You got to grit your teeth and smile and be polite and say the appropriate things, because you're right. Nobody actually really cares for the real story too. That's the fact of it. Nobody really cares. It's just like when you cold call someone and they're like, "What do you do?" Or "Yeah, tell me what you do." They don't really care. They're asking, "What's in it for me?" Just want to make sure you're not crazy and you're not going to make them look dumb. So in the same way, like in the interview, yeah, you smile through your teeth and be like, "It was a good learning opportunity. It just wasn't a fit. I found out that it wasn't quite right thing. This, that, and the other," and we departed politely. And for me, by the way, almost every company on my list of experience, I still have connections there. I didn't burn those bridges, even though on a couple of them I was really tempted to throw that lighter down, but didn't burn the bridge, man. I kept it, even though I really didn't think I needed to, or that it was my responsibility to, because of how things played out. And that all goes back to the mental health, right? It all goes back to that feeling of, you know, dejection and rejection and feeling like you got done wrong and harboring those ill feelings, and then what you're dealing with your personal life, and then the financial fallout from those things. It all all becomes a storm, all feeds into itself.
Yeah, man, it's the snake that eats its own tail, the Ouroboros. It's just the way it is. And yeah, it feels like it's something that I've been talking about a lot lately, and you start to hear it enough times where it feels like a very similar story with the names changed, and it's crazy, man. And it's weird how I didn't notice that before. It's just that people just don't really talk about it. Yeah, but something else I'm passionate about is helping people, right? So I mean, this has been a good opportunity to try and help, whether that just be by listening or providing some sort of insight. I mean, that's why I got into like sales coaching.
Yeah.
And that's why I do a lot of the things I do. Almost like anything that you see I do online is like, hey, how can I help these people? And I think that's the best way to build something.
Yeah.
And I know that's what you're doing right now in consulting. I'm curious.
That's like the fundamental of the therapy. I mean, sorry to cut you off, but like you're right. Like the core, kind of the core. My wife is a counselor, so I'm familiar with a little bit of like the psychology and how she does her counseling and so on. And step 1 is to make the person realize they're not alone. And step 2 is to hear them out so they don't feel like they're crazy for thinking the things that they're thinking. And again, in the 4 months that I've been doing those calls with random people, that's been the number one theme of people just being like, man, Bilal, I follow your content and I feel like I know you because you've said my story through your own or others before, and I heard myself in those. So I feel this connection to you. And it was just so validating to know that I wasn't alone and I'm not crazy for thinking those things are wrong. And I'm like, trust me, you're not alone and you're not crazy. There's a whole world of people out there that get it. And all their titles involve something like sales, account executive, sales development. Like we all get it because we're all going through it right now. So yeah, your posting, your community and the things you're doing, Patrick, are really, really, really important because so many people need to hear that. They just need to hear their story in somebody else's words and realize, oh, okay, I've made a connection with this person without even having to speak to them.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's weird how when you talk about, hey, am I crazy and how can you help me? Those both apply to the conversations you're having with fellow salespeople and also with prospects that you talked about earlier when you said like when you're cold calling. And it's funny when you just boil it down, it's the same thing. Like any sort of I'm talking to another person can really boil down to that, whether it be in professional context or personal. It's kind of funny how simple it is, and we overcomplicate it to the point.
Oh, we do.
It's obscured.
Yeah, that's why the Chris Voss stuff. I've been doing all the like labeling and mirroring with my wife, with like Chris Voss, and it crushes it, man. It works every time with her.
Dude, a couple of texts you sent me, I was like, dude, look at that Chris Voss tactic you just used. Like would it be ridiculous, that whole thing, like the negative ask? I was like, oh man, classic Voss.
I
When you
know.
sent me that, I got so excited.
Yeah, I get it too, man. I get people like, would it be horrible of me to ask you for 15 minutes to talk? And I'm like, no, and well done. Well
I love
played.
it. Yeah.
Well played, because that works. Because I like that you're doing it that way. You made me feel safe with my no.
No, it's a great technique because even if you see it happening, it's still like, it's still good though. It still works on me. Same thing with mirroring. When someone mirrors me, I know what they're doing, but it works still. I still feel the need to explain myself.
Yep. Yep.
It's weird. And I know he has a video in his masterclass where he tells somebody what he's going to do and then he does it to them and they
And
can't
they
help it
still
and they're
do
getting
it.
frustrated the whole time. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen that yet?
No, I've not watched his master. I binge watch his YouTube stuff, the Black Swan Group on YouTube, and I get his newsletter. I'm always reading that, but I haven't done the master class yet.
Oh, it's worth the money. Totally
Yeah.
worth it. But speaking of his YouTube stuff, the video on the COVID negotiations is the best thing I've seen
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
this whole situation.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's so good. And anybody that's listening right now, go watch that, and I guarantee you it'll like make your life easier right now.
Yeah, go watch that and sign up for his newsletter if you haven't. Like the Chris Voss, the Black Swan newsletter. It's like the thing I read every week, hands down. I always read it. It's so good. It's such good reminders.
Someday I really hope I can get kidnapped so Chris Voss can negotiate me out of the situation. That's how much I admire him.
You get a chance to meet him.
Like, man, you could have just like hired me. It's like, no, man, I had to go to the cartels.
This is way cheaper.
It's cheaper, less fun, but I'm on a budget. You understand.
You understand.
It's like, hey man, like our financial plan for the year didn't include this, so I went to the cartels and they have my family, dude. I need you.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
man. I mean, on the vein of consulting, I'm curious when you're having conversations, and I assume there's other salespeople you're talking to when you're consulting, or are you the only salesperson when you go in and start a consulting gig? Usually,
No, I'll talk to other salespeople. Yeah.
other salespeople there.
Yeah.
What is that like to go in and have those kind of conversations with the ground troops? Because I've never done that.
I mean, it's interesting because as we've been talking about this, I was reflecting on it. It's very much like therapy. Like the sales consultant becomes like a therapist for like the SDR to like confide in all the real shit that's really going on. Like this this guy over here doesn't, and she over there doesn't this, and I'm over here trying to make it happen, and no one's acknowledging my work, and it's super frustrating. You hear like all the details come out, and of course the leadership's like oblivious to the majority of it, if not all of it. It's again, and it goes back to, because most sales teams build their culture on outcomes. Like there isn't a sales team on the planet that hasn't experienced or seen a giant screen on the board showing them their revenue numbers, right? But it's like, what's the journey to that revenue number? We all know how much has to go in to hit it, but none of that is acknowledged. It's just showing output, not input. It's just, it's the destination, not the journey, even though we all know that's wrong. Because if you ask everyone, it's like, what matters more, the journey or the destination? We're like, no, the journey. We all know that. We all know it's important to do the journey right, even if you don't always get to the destination. But yet almost every sales team is built on outputs, revenue, dollars. And it's just like, that's not the story. Right. And then you've got people like Simon Sinek and others that are talking about, why, and talking about how important it is to build culture on things that are real, that hold merit, that don't sway in something like COVID-19. Because if you built your sales culture on integrity, on empathy, on on courage, then when COVID-19 hit, none of those things went away. You still tried all those things. You still try to be courageous. You still try to be empathetic, right? You still try to show integrity, whether it was a pandemic or not. But that's not how a lot of these companies have built themselves. So that, and again, tying it all back to what we've been talking about, mental health, right? And it affects you, because then you as a seller have a bad month, but you did everything right, and you don't get like appreciation for that, for like the good effort, unless you stayed for like 10 hours and did 130 cold calls for a single day. They'll give you a pat on the back for that, even though that was junk work and That's not how, that's not how, that you're just grinding yourself. You're burning yourself out doing that. Right. So you either get rewarded for being stand out in the wrong way, for doing too much effort and burning yourself out. And somehow that gets celebrated when really that should be admonished. Right. And, or you like produce, even though nobody really cares what the journey was for that production. And it's like that, neither of those is healthy. It's a middle ground of like effort and results. And you appreciate both.
Yeah, and something that I find interesting along those lines of the journey is we have a sales wins channel that has like all the deals we close come in, and obviously the ones that are of higher value usually get celebrated more. And that's one thing, you don't even know what that person had to probably fucking do to close that deal. But there's sometimes like a 2K deal comes through, no one says shit about it, it's just sitting there. But like because I work with that person on it, I know what they went through to get that tiny deal, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
man, 7 calls, like the SE came in, like you were stressing about it, like you couldn't sleep the night before. They were trying to reduce the seat count, like they called you a terrible name, like all
Yeah.
this stuff, all this stress to get this little deal that's like a 40th of your quota.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
And like
Yeah.
that journey, no one gives a shit about that journey.
No pat on the back for it. Nothing. Right. Even though it should be commended.
Even
Even
the
though
big
if
one
you,
though,
yeah.
like all the stuff
Yeah.
the person had to do that. Like I met with their procurement team 30 times, and I flew out there, and like I
Right.
wrote them a 30-page proposal. I didn't
And love
sleep for two
letters.
weeks. Yeah, you know the crazy shit people do for
Yeah.
like enterprise deals, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't
I've
speak
done
to my
some
wife
of
for a week.
them. I've
I'm
done
sure
some
you
of them.
did.
So yeah, I'm well aware. Yeah, I'm with you, man. And like, why is it so rare to find a sales team that rewards other than just like top producer, right? Like I've done posts on this of like, what if you had an award every month for like intelligence officer, the person who finds out and shares the most valuable information around competition? What if you had a reward that was like related to the person who's most efficient on the team, who got the best results with the least amount of activity, regardless of whether they hit their goal or not? They were just super efficient with their time. That'd be an interesting award to give. What if, like, there's so many ways to build, give an award for the person that got the best satisfaction or the best customer review from the sales process, regardless of what the deal size was. If some deal closed and they were just fanatical about the sales experience that they got, give an award for that, right? Every month, right? Give an award for the most helpful person on the team that the team nominates who answered the most questions for the group, regardless of their performance, right? Whether they were top of the pack, middle, or bottom. If they were just really helpful for the team and gave answers, give an award for that, right? You could come up. I mean, we could sit here and come up with dozens upon dozens of awards that can be given. Yet every sales company or every sales team on the planet is giving awards for top producer, top revenue, and very few give awards for the rest of these things. And again, like part of your mental health and wellness is being acknowledged and appreciated for what you do. It's so stifling to feel unappreciated. It's so stifling, right? It's one of the most crushing feelings when you go to work and do all this effort and nobody acknowledges or appreciates it, simply because the output wasn't the exact revenue number needed or wasn't the exact desired outcome, even though you still did everything right or you did everything to the best of your ability. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, even like if there's a shout out for someone and they misquote by like a cent, they'd be like, "Oh, you just missed it." Like, who gives a shit? Why do you have to say that? Like, that
Right.
number is probably not even close to like the production cost of that person anyway. I mean, like, I think every time I think about how quotas are set, it makes me go insane a little bit. But I think that's another story. We could do another podcast just on that. I have one last question for you, and it's a little more like into the sales process than we usually go when we talk. But as somebody that's just started managing people and I'm just bringing on direct reports, yeah, I obviously have people that come to me that are struggling with certain things. And sometimes I'm not really sure where to start,
Yeah.
right? Like if
Yeah.
you were to give advice to either like a sales rep that's just like struggling and doesn't know why, or someone that's trying to help them, like is there any process that you take or do you go with your gut? What is your reaction when that happens?
Yeah. The first thing is like actions are by their intentions. So what's the intention? You know, it's and that usually starts with the individual just reflecting for a moment. Like sometimes it could be something trivial, like I'm writing this email and I'm stuck. Okay, what's the intention of the email? But something could be something bigger, like I feel stuck as a person. Okay, well, what is your intention, right? What do you want to? What do you desire? What's your heart telling you? Can you purify that intention, clarify that intention, write it down, speak it out loud, and then work from there? Um, so that's usually the best course of action because that ties the heart and mind together. Otherwise, this gets a little bit confused, and this needs a little course correction, right? I'm pointing to the heart and mind for those just listening. So that, yeah, like, what's this guy doing over here? But really, that's what it is, right? Like getting your heart in the right place, so that your mind can be in the right place, so that then all of a sudden, you can start speaking and acting and listening correctly, and everything kind of falls in line. So I think it always starts there. Actions are by their intentions. So always remember and purify the intention of what you're trying to do. That should usually guide you to the right thing. And in that same vein, if it feels wrong, it probably is. And if it feels right, it probably is. So, we're pretty predisposed to know what's right and wrong. I'm learning this with my kids, 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. The 3-year-old knows when he did something wrong. He doesn't need it told to him. Nobody had to explain to him that hitting was wrong or biting was wrong. He knew it. He knew it. Did he just still do it sometimes? Yeah. And when he did he know he did something wrong? Yeah. Yeah. So it's not, you don't got to strive for perfection, just excellence, and excellence is just being aware of yourself.
Yeah, people usually have their own North Stars. I think when we start to not listen to it is when problems actually arise. You can't doubt it. But that's hard to teach people because, like, especially, I spend all this time with them, like teaching them like our process,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not even theirs. And that's another thing that I've been thinking about. It's like, man, like we don't co-develop a sales process with like a salesperson, right? Like if you put somebody into a sales process that they fundamentally disagree with, they're not going to be able to do it. Like it's just not possible. I'm curious if you've run into that before.
Oh yeah, I've been that person where I'm like, I just this isn't for me. It's not how I do things. Um, yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's why I like startups, because startups, I do get to stamp my personality and style onto things. That's probably why one of the reasons why I've avoided working at a large company and working at like Series A and B startups, because be so I get to shape so much of the process and the practices. But yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah. And how do you deal with that? So all really good questions, man. Why are you asking such good questions at the end of the talk, Patrick? What are you doing
You
here? You
got
trying to
three
make a
whole
cliffhanger?
minutes, dude. You got 3 whole minutes.
Like, what is this? It's like asking me all
Cliffhanger.
these life questions and stuff. I got no answers for these.
Look, I was going to be an English teacher, so I think of writing prompts all day. Like that's my entire thing is I'm just the guy that gives you the writing prompts on the SAT.
Oh my god.
For anyone that's just listening, he's sitting back with his arms behind his head,
I
just
am. You could
contemplating.
just contemplating my life, and it's all the decisions I've made.
But that's what the 5onCast is all about, y'all. It's about contemplating life and all the mistakes and successes in
True.
your life. It's
True.
also about peer-to-peer consulting that we give you for free on the 5 on Friday, which is actually one of them's tomorrow. We have an announcement coming up for a new 5
Ooh.
on Friday. Ooh, yeah. You might have seen our LinkedIn posts. And if you're listening to this in the future, it's the 28th of May. There's some teasing going on. And
Mm.
we're going to give you that payoff. I promise. But this was the first episode. I think it was pretty sick. I don't know if you want to plug anything, man. Do you want to direct people anywhere in particular?
I'll say, hit me up on the Death to Fluff community on Bravado. It's deathtofluff.bravado.co. And I've been thinking more and more about how I can be helpful. And one of the areas I'm seeing a big opportunity is a lot of startups that are dealing with outbound right now are struggling with that, trying to find provocative, interesting, and thought-provoking messaging that they could be sending their prospects versus just standard benefits and features. So if you're a startup out there listening to this and that's something you're interested in, I'm definitely all ears and all game to help with that.
Please hit this man up. One of the smartest people I know. There's a reason he's on the first episode. So message him a million times. And you might need to get his phone number, though, because LinkedIn's inbox sucks. And if you're listening to this, LinkedIn, please fix it. I love you, but you have flaws.
Yeah, you do.
You do, seriously.
Yeah,
we all
do.
do, though. So we'll work on it together, LinkedIn. You want to find me, you go to LinkedIn, where we're just shit talking. Patrick Downs there, or the When You Hang Up community on Bravado. It's linked there, my LinkedIn profile. 5onFriday.live as well. And then the B2B Growth Show. I got too many plugs. I need to do less things and get paid more.
You're worldwide, man. Worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide. All right. Well, that's my sign off. Get paid more. Thanks for listening to the 5onCast. I am, as always, your eternally living host, Dragon Patrick Downs. And I will talk to you again soon. Say goodbye, everybody.